and welcome along to our stream today. So I hope everyone is doing well. Joining me on the stream today is Manfred Wallner. He has been a community contributor to Boxstarter and Chocolatey for quite a while now. So I will let him introduce himself just now, and then we'll talk about what we are going to be discussing today. So Manfred, do you want to come on and say hello?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Manfred. I've been, I consider myself being a long-term Chocolatey user. So I started in, I think, 2015 or 16 or so, actively using Chocolatey for work and both personally. And yeah, somehow got involved with the Boxstarter project along the way because I've been using it ever since. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So the intention of today's stream, we literally just released a new version of Boxstarter today. That was version 3. It's been around for a little bit now in the form of a beta release, which went out a month, 2 months ago, something like that. So we released it as a beta release, first of all, just to collect some feedback, because there was quite, it's fair to say, Manfred, that there was quite a few changes went into this release, and we'll get onto that in a little bit, but we thought it would make sense to do a beta release first of all, just to iron out any niggles or problems that people had with it. But we officially shipped version 3 this morning, so it is out and ready to get it. So if you haven't got it, go out and get it. So maybe where we should start, Manfred, or rather, before we get on to that, if anybody on the stream, either via Twitch or YouTube or wherever you happen to be watching this, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and I will keep an eye on the chat to see if there are any questions that we can answer on the stream together. Or if you've got any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out on the usual contact mechanisms for anything related to Chocolatey and or Boxstarter, and we'll be happy to answer them. So with that done, how about we jump into it and say, what are the main differences, Manfred, between V2 and V3, and what's changed?
So basically the intention of Boxstarter V3 release was to get rid of the mechanism how Boxstarter interacted with Chocolatey. So it's actually on the very core of Boxstarter. In version 2, Boxstarter did not use the chocolatey.exe, so the Chocolatey that is installed on your local machine, but it rather used the Chocolatey DLL, so what kind of the internal bits that drive Chocolatey. But the way it's been wired up, Boxstarter was solely reliant on using the chocolatey.dll, where Chocolatey didn't even ship with it. So there was the possibility to use the Chocolatey DLL, and you could get it from NuGet, but normally it just wasn't there. And because Boxstarter was bundled with, the way it was set up is basically you got this PowerShell host. So you've got this one PowerShell session where Boxstarter runs it and then each and every call to Chocolatey is run through chocolatey.dll, which basically resulted in having like one huge lifespan of all of your Chocolatey commands going into the same session, which unfortunately did resolve into a couple of nasty bugs that you did not see when using regular Chocolatey. Because imagine you've got a Choco package that does some add type, some name. And then you've got another Choco package which also does add type with the same name. Then those two basically clash because they run in the same PowerShell session, which is something you would not normally see when using Chocolatey, because each and every Chocolatey call got its own PowerShell host, got its own process and run space, and therefore those just would never get in touch with each other. So
Sure.
This is kind of one of the core issues with the old version of Boxstarter. So everything was just in one PowerShell session. And also because of the way Boxstarter basically injected itself and all its modules into the PowerShell host that Chocolatey has been using, there kind of was no way of upgrading to a chocolatey version later than 0.8.9 or 0.9.8, something. So like a really old version of chocolatey, and you just could not upgrade to a new version of chocolatey.dll without basically breaking everything. And chocolatey was actively developed, luckily, in the last couple of years, and lots of bugs got fixed, new features were introduced, and you just could not use all of this on Boxstarter because it basically was pinned to the old version of chocolatey because of the dependency on the chocolatey.dll. Which is the main reason why we wanted to get rid of Boxstarter using chocolatey.dll and rather use the native, I call it native, just the version of chocolatey that's installed on the system-wide, the version that's used in all of your other scripts. And from the chocolatey agent, chocolatey for business is also one of these things that if you had a business license, you just could not really use Boxstarter because the license extensions would not load in this old monkey patch mechanism. And also if you got a business license and you happen to have access to all of the cool chocolatey features, which you get with the business license, you also want to have those when using an open source project like Boxstarter that is supposed to wrap around chocolatey and not break it if you've got a license for it. So
no, it makes sense.
Yeah. So this is basically the core issue that's been addressed. And now Boxstarter handles basically Boxstarter still injects itself to chocolatey, but it does not use the previous old monkey patch mechanism where you had to figure out how chocolatey internal worked to basically hijack the autofac mechanism that's used to load all the components. So it's basically a reversed or dependency injection mechanism that was abused by Boxstarter to have itself and all of its modules loaded by chocolatey when chocolatey started a PowerShell session. And basically we threw all of this out and modified Boxstarter so it actually creates a chocolatey extension. So there's this thing called chocolatey extensions, which are really it's really a powerful concept of how a package or how you can extend chocolatey. So Boxstarter dynamically now creates an extension module whenever you use it to install something via chocolatey, and then after it's done, it gets rid of this extension again, because ultimately, if we would just leave this Boxstarter extension module in place, it will alter the way chocolatey works. Because when you think of Boxstarter, you're basically in some different context or environment than when you normally want to use chocolatey. So Boxstarter is like a very specific tool for purposes such as fully automatically setting up hosts or servers or doing fancy stuff like remote installations. But normally you do not want all of the functionality to be there in your normal chocolatey environment. So yeah, back to you, Gary.
Okay, so let me just make sure that I've got this right in my head. So we've got this thing called Chocolatey, and Chocolatey is a package manager for Windows. Now, what Chocolatey focuses on is installation of a package. So you want to install Git, you do choco install Git. But where Boxstarter kind of picks up from where Chocolatey leaves off is it's more it extends the life cycle, what you're trying to achieve. So the kind of token example with Boxstarter is it's the clues in the name. You've just installed a new machine and you want to fully provision all the applications onto that machine, or you want to maybe provide all of the Windows updates onto that machine, and you want to do it in a fully unattended manner, so you can just kick off the process and come back an hour, 2 hours later, and everything's installed. Now with Chocolatey, you could do that, but because we're on a Windows machine, there are these things called system reboots that are necessary as a result of an application being installed or an update being installed. So historically, Boxstarter kind of filled that gap. So Boxstarter has this concept of reboot resiliency. It knows when a reboot is required, it will perform the reboot for you. It'll re-log into that machine and it'll kick off, kind of pick up where it left off and continue the installation process, which is great. It's kind of exactly what we want in a system like this. But in order to allow that to happen, Chocolatey had to be kind of intercepted. Boxstarter had to reach into Chocolatey, figure out when things were happening, when a reboot was required, or when a package was installed, to then take the next appropriate action. So the way that Boxstarter did that previously was by reaching into the Chocolatey DLL, doing that work, and then carrying on with its process. But now this change, all of that's been removed, and using it or adding itself as an extension package means that we can still tap into those events, if you like, know when a reboot is required, but we're now using the system installed version of Chocolatey. So then let's say tomorrow we release a new version of Chocolatey. We're not releasing a new version of Chocolatey tomorrow. Don't get excited. Just hypothetically, let's say we release a new version of Chocolatey tomorrow with some new features that you want to take advantage of in your Boxstarter package. You can do that now because you're using the system installed version of Chocolatey, correct?
Yes, it's perfectly correct. Also, imagine when you're installing like a machine from bottom up, you might have, or you will have, a couple of packages that do depend on other packages. And you can also create like a meta package that has a lot of dependencies. It's basically all of your hosts set up in one package. And when using plain Chocolatey and installing this meta package, it most likely will break at some point because one package relies on another package being available or like fully functional. And if a reboot is required in between, somewhere along this dependency chain, Chocolatey just does not have the tools or the knowledge of that the host actually should reboot and continue the installation after the reboot. And this is what Boxstarter basically was created for and tackles.
Gotcha. So just a small point. So Chocolatey does know when a reboot's required because it intercepts the exit codes from the package installation, but Chocolatey is focusing on package installations. It's not the main focus of Chocolatey is not let's handle all the things that are a Windows installation, and that's where we kind of defer to higher level systems such as chefs, the puppets, the Ansibles, where you would orchestrate some more of that. And Boxstarter kind of sits, I would say it's fair to say that Boxstarter sits between Chocolatey and the likes of a full configuration management system. It's more it's intended as you kind of use it initially when you're first running up the machine, and then if you were to blow that machine away again, you could use Boxstarter to reprovision it again. Whereas it's not a full configuration management system, the likes of the Ansibles, the chefs, and the puppets. Cool.
Exactly.
Okay. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat, but we'll not bring those comments onto the chat. You can catch up with them later if you want. So okay, so that's shipped. So we've got Boxstarter v3 shipped. Well, did you have a demo that you could show of it in action? Because I think that would be good to kind of concrete some of the ideas that we've spoken about here.
Yes, but first of all, I would point out that there's this thing called the Boxstarter website, which you can find on boxstarter.org, which got an awesome overhaul and new design by Steph, who is responsible for all of the cool Chocolatey UI topics.
I've just noticed, is your background the same background that's on the website as well? Is that, or is that just happenstance that is similar?
It's really similar. By accident.
Very good. I like what you did there. I like what you did.
Okay, so if you do not know it, check out this website. It's awesome. There's a lot of information on how to use Boxstarter, what Boxstarter is in here. A couple of things will get renewed as soon as we have time. Yeah, but there's this Boxstarter website. Go check it out. So now heading over to a demo box. Okay, so I've got this VM prepared, and there really is basically nothing on it. So, okay, it's got Chocolatey installed, to be fair, but apart from this, yeah, there's nothing. There's literally nothing but chocolatey. And to get Boxstarter and to kick everything off, you basically do a choco install of Boxstarter, and it will install it will install Boxstarter and all of its dependencies. So Boxstarter comes as a set of dependencies, dependent modules that are also reflected as chocolatey packages. So basically you always get like Boxstarter, Boxstarter common, WinConfig, the bootstrapper and stuff like that. Just happens to be this way. There are no current plans to change it. It's just the PowerShell module structure of Boxstarter also is represented as the chocolatey package structure. And when installing Boxstarter, you will get this thing called I don't know why it's taking so long now. It's the demo goes. You get this thing called the Boxstarter console, or the Boxstarter shell, sorry.
So just while we're waiting for that to finish installing, there was a question that came up in chat. So so I assume the temp cache folder issue is now a thing of the past with v3. Is that a fair
Yes.
statement? It is.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
This and lots of other issues.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to take a look at the release notes where we cover some of the improvements, some of the bug fixes that have gone into this release. So yeah, I think I'm familiar with the one that you're referring to there. Yes, but it is fixed. Yes.
So now that Boxstarter is installed, we have this thing called Boxstarter shell, which basically spins up a PowerShell session and preloads or imports the Boxstarter modules and gives you a short help text of what is available, what you can do with Boxstarter, how to get started, all of the good things. So when you're using Boxstarter, I'm wondering why this is taking so long now. Maybe my machine is struggling with the live share. Don't know. It works. So whenever using Boxstarter, you basically get two modes of operation. So either you in the Boxstarter shell where you can do interactive stuff, you've got all of the Boxstarter goodies available there, or you're installing a Boxstarter package. A Boxstarter package really is nothing else but a chocolatey package, but everything that's available in Boxstarter, such as the WinConfig or the ability to automatically do reboots after a package installation is finished, if it's required, is available there. So you can decide either, do I want to basically use Boxstarter from the Boxstarter shell, or do I want Boxstarter to install a chocolatey package that simply can do more than a plain chocolatey package would be able of or capable of. So just to give you an example, I can now install Boxstarter package and say, I don't know, VS Code, because you need it. And what's happening now is that I actually did forget to pass in credentials, and now we can only see half of the thing I wanted to show you, but we'll get there. So now Boxstarter went to install a chocolatey package, which is VS Code that's available in the community repository. And now it's detected, oh, wait, this computer has a pending reboot, which I kind of prepared for. It's a VM that's known to basically have a reboot pending. And now this machine just reboots. And after the machine rebooted, the installation will continue where it left off. So not quite true, but the installation will reinstall the package that's been installed prior to the reboot being necessary. So basically, you should always create your chocolatey packages being idempotent. So no matter how many times you do the installation again and again and again, the result should always be the same. So just really encourage you creating your packages this way.
So while that's rebooting then, so just to clarify, so if you had done a Choco install VS Code while your machine was in that state, Chocolatey would have output a warning that said it's detected that there is a pending reboot, essentially, but it would allow you to continue with the installation. However, the underlying application installer might error and say, well, you can't install because there's a pending reboot, but that's wholly dependent on the application installer, how it works, what it detects, etc. But what Boxstarter's done here is it's essentially running the same chocolatey package, the VS Code package, but it's preemptively said there is a reboot pending. what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to reboot my machine, install the updates that are necessary, or finish the updates that are necessary in your case, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to install that package that you told me about. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. So also when you pass in credentials, so you can, I should have passed in credentials. So I should have used dash credentials and then put in a credentials object or done get credentials. And what Boxstarter would have done then, or I'm going to show you in a later example, is that it would store these credentials in terms of creating an auto login or setting up an auto login, just as you would do if you actually would go to system settings and enable auto login for your user. And then the system would come back after reboot without you requiring to put in username and password, and just continue from it automatically. And whenever Boxstarter finishes, it does this thing called Boxstarter cleanup or cleanup-Boxstarter, and then it gets rid of these credentials again. It disables the auto login. It re-enables the UAC, stuff like that. And it should be done by now. Sorry for that. But in the meantime, I think while we're waiting for this to come back, we could probably, yeah, just sharing my browser again, I think. Okay. So, yeah, what Boxstarter really tries to achieve is making a host setup as simple as possible. Not only concerning the reboot stuff, but also it's basically not called recipe. Matt Rock, the initial creator of Boxstarter, I think just called it the Boxstarter package. You can use any file, any PowerShell script, any text file as a Boxstarter package. And what you can do is just create a gist and put some file on any hosting provider, whatever, and use this gist or this file, this URL actually, as package name for installation. What Boxstarter will then do is it automatically creates a package from that content and basically installs it. So you can have your host setup like in version control on GitHub, and just use Boxstarter whenever you need to reset up your machine or you need to strip a new dev box. Go there, have it do all of the installation steps, all of the reboots, and just tell you when it's done. And you can go and have a coffee in the meantime. So, and in this gist, so I'm going to make this a bit bigger, I think. You can see some of the nice bits that Chocolatey Boxstarter provides that's not typically in Chocolatey, such as invoke reboot. So invoke reboot is a Boxstarter command that takes the credentials you've passed, sets up the auto login, and then actually does invoke a reboot. So it uses restart computer. Your machine will come back and kick off where it stopped. This is why you should create your packages in a way that it's idempotent. So only if the NuGet package provider is not yet installed, do install it and invoke reboot. Of course, there are certain like tip wires. So if this for some reason will fail every time, then you'll find yourself in a reboot loop where Boxstarter tries to install and reboots and tries to install and reboot again. So what you do then is just X out the Boxstarter window that pops up and just cancel the installation. You typically get more than enough time to do that. And then you would go in and see what the package with this, what the problem with this actual call that fails is, and fix it manually, and then restart the Boxstarter procedure. This package just does some basic stuff like setting up the NuGet provider, PowerShell get. It gets rid of all of these AppX packages that are typically on a machine you don't want to have. And then it installs some basic things like 7-zip Firefox Git, Chocolatey VS Code. It also updates the PowerShell help, and set some Windows Explorer options, which is neat, which is also one of the Boxstarter WinConfig features. So you basically can have all of your Windows host or DevBox setup in one script and use Boxstarter to install it. And this has been appreciated even by the folks of Microsoft. They created this repository called Windows DevBox Setup Scripts that use the Boxstart web launcher or the Click Once bootstrapper to set up a couple of their dev boxes. So you've got this recipes here, and yeah, we can take a look at what this does. So these are the Boxstarter packages that they use. You can see a lot of Choco installs here. So we install Visual Studio 27, Workload Asia, Workload Universal, whatever. And what Boxstarter always does, it kind of intercepts these Choco calls, checks if a reboot is required. If it's required, it does the reboot and then reruns this installation script again. And with the Click One installer, you can just use this URL that's visible. I'm going to grab the URL. And let me see. If we have a look at this URL, this URL points to boxstarter.org/package, which basically is the endpoint for the Click Once installer. And then it passes an URL. And this URL is, yeah, basically the Boxstarter package that gets installed. So what they have done here and what Boxstarter supports is having clickable links to kick off your machine setup. So all you have to do is, I'm going to, web.node.js, going to click that link. And the Boxstarter web launch application is created. And when I open this, it tells me it's an executable file. Would you want to run it? I'm not going to do that now. Oh, you can see it. And if I would click OK, then it would go ahead and install Chocolatey if it's not already installed, and then use Boxstarter and Chocolatey to run this script that's living in this repository. So that's pretty amazing, I think. Or it's like a neat little trick.
So just to elaborate slightly on that, so is that Firefox that you've got there, or what browser are you using?
Yes, it's Firefox.
The thing I want to point out is that the Click Once installer, the workflow cycle or the actual execution of the Click Once installer, which is a Microsoft technology, it is supported. I was going to say out of the box, but it's not quite out of the box. In Edge, you can enable Click Once installer. So the actual process when you click on one of those Boxstarter links that Manfred referred to is it will kind of automatically start the process and download the Click Once installer and perform everything that Manfred mentioned there. In some browsers, the workflow isn't as nice because what you had to do was save the file and then run it and etc. But it works in Edge out of the box by flipping the setting, and there is a extension for Chrome that allows the Click Once installers to work automatically rather than having to do what Manfred showed there in Firefox. So just a small point, but I remember when Matt first showed me that process, and where again it's going from nothing on the box to having lots of stuff installed. All you had to do was open a browser, go to a URL, and magic happened. It's quite, I was going to use the word scary, but that's not the right word, but it was very, very fun to see it the first time I saw it. It's a great starting point. And like I say, what the intention behind this repository when Microsoft created this one was they wanted to be able to set up different kinds of environments. So they had these kind of scenarios. They had someone who was a Windows developer. These are all the applications and packages that they need. Here's someone that is a web developer. These are all the applications and packages that they need. So it was interesting to see how you could formulate those scenarios for different people within your organization or different people within your team, and then keep them in version control and keep them updated with the different packages and applications that you need. So is that still the first reboot attempt, or is that?
No, it's back? Just it just came back, and I hope it's going faster now.
So there is a known, as soon as you start sharing through Zoom, machines or computers do seem to slow down for some reason. We don't fully know why. There was a couple of comments in the chat room that might be interesting to take while we're there, though. So it was David's comments. Where were they? They were, what was the one I was looking at? I use Microsoft Configuration Designer to create provisioning packages to skip the out-of-the-box setup. Then I manually start my Boxstarter scripts to finish the setup. Do you guys have any better ideas to have Boxstarter run during or after provisioning a finished, or rather, after provisioning is finished, to avoid having to manually run it? I am trying to make it as a one-touch process. Thank you. And Stevie suggested that there's an unattended auto unattend.xml that you can use to do the work. But was there any other comments that you had on that, Manfred, or is that not an area that you played with?
No, actually, auto unattend is a really good point. If you do it like in a really bootstrapping phase or in the like automatically unattended Windows setup, but you could also use Boxstarter to like run remotely against a couple of machines. So I'm not sure if you're just talking about setting up one machine at a time, or if you like sysprep or create a couple of machines and then have Boxstarter to, you can use Boxstarter remotely to do the same thing or run the same setup script on a bunch of hosts and come back when this is finished. So that also might be of interest. I'm really getting annoyed of my VM here.
You might, as a suggestion, if you maybe stop your share and see if that doesn't free up some of the resources, because like I say, we have seen sometimes that once you start sharing things, they unfortunately have a overhead that kicks in. So, but while we're doing that, if anybody else did have any questions about anything to do with Boxstarter, feel free. It's fair to say there are a couple of known issues with the V3 version. They either have issues already open on the repository and assigned to the 301 milestone. They were deemed as non-critical bugs. They don't stop anything fundamentally from working. So the idea was to get the V3 release out the door and then come back and circle around and do a reasonably quick release with some of the bug fixes in them. So basically collect some more feedback, find out if there's any more issues, and then get them updated and a new version released quite quickly. So keep an eye out for that if you run into those, or like I say, check out the milestone on GitHub to see if there are any that you're running into there. How's your VM coming along?
So yeah, I think I'll just start another one.
Okay. So what we were showing obviously was the first example, which was Boxstarter install essentially VS Code. There was a reboot already pending. Boxstarter noticed that, picked it up and did a reboot. And it looks like it was maybe installing more stuff on the Windows instance than you expected. So it's not quite come back yet.
So what I did now is I just looking for the sharing again. Start sharing. No. Huh. So this is the second VM I prepared, and I just booted it, and I hope we're luckier with this one. But yeah. So it will just take a second. So the next example I prepare is just take this gist I showed you on GitHub and use Boxstarter to install everything that's in this gist, have it reboot automatically and come back when it's finished. And so there's a little bit more going on here. We can see a couple of these WinConfig features and how they do their work. So basically, what I want to come back to is that Boxstarter Real is just a set of PowerShell modules and scripts that kind of wrap around Chocolatey and extend on what Chocolatey can do. So it's not really, you can use them on their own, but actually the full potential of Boxstarter is to like pack an installation script or file into a Chocolatey package and then use Boxstarter to install this package, because then all of the reboot resiliency is happening and also the remote installations. There's also modules for talking to Azure VMs or Hyper-V VMs. Yeah, so this should work now. Yay, we've got a machine again, which is awfully slow, but yeah. Okay. So, oh, this was the machine I was supposed to remote install to. So there's no Boxstarter here right now, but that's not a problem because installing Boxstarter is relatively slow in comparison to installing Windows updates, at least. Damn it. Okay.
You were fighting with the German keyboard there, I think, were you?
Yes, I am. So actually, I'm not fighting with the German keyboard. I'm fighting with the US keyboard.
The US English one.
Yeah. So
there's some comments in the chat there. Don't be discouraged by the demo issues today. Boxstarter plus Chocolatey are great tools. Yes, they both huge time saver and help tremendously. The real problem here is Windows sucks. That wasn't me saying that. I'll just paraphrase that. And not to take Manfred thunder, of course. The stream is going, and the stream that is going on today. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, so this is a second VM that we've got that's got the Boxstarter. It's now got Boxstarter installed, and we're away to start the Boxstarter shell. And this demo is to install from a gist, correct?
yes.
Okay. So this was the thing that always confused me initially with Boxstarter, but what's going to happen under the hood is that Boxstarter is going to reach out to that URL that you provide. It's going to find the gist that's got all the commands in it. It's then going to create a temporary package, isn't it? That has a unique name. So it's temp, then lots of characters after it. But that's really just a mechanism for how Chocolatey works under the hood, because Chocolatey is a package manager. So it takes that script, wraps it into a package, installs the package, and that package is left on disk at that point. Is that right? So it's still there. So if I did a Chocolist local only, I would still see that temp package, correct?
Yes, that's a great point. I'm just going to show that because this is something I'm quite sure that it won't trigger reboot and will not come back for a long time.
Yeah.
So if, damn it, this thing really gets slowed down when doing a screen share or when using Zoom. Yeah, so Zoom is eating half of my CPU. Just check.
Okay.
Okay. So damn it, I just got rid of going to start a second shell. The Boxstarter shell, as I mentioned earlier, does provide some basic information of how to get started. And in this initial text, there's the basic commands you can use to create or install or build a Boxstarter package. So when you're using gist URL or like a remote URL, there's absolutely no need for you to do create the package first. You can just have Boxstarter pointed towards this URL. But there are a lot of use cases, like when you're in build systems or automating like host setups at work, where you do not want to reach out to the internet. You do have some, let's say, more complicated setup steps that need to be done. And this is where I can, so just this is where these commands come in handy. So you can create a package by saying new Boxstarter package, and then you have to provide ID like hello Gary. And what this does now is it creates a chocolatey package in a path that's defaulted to C program data Boxstarter chocolatey packages, which is kind of the local package cache or store for Boxstarter. It's actually handled just like a regular chocolatey source. So this is the path where Boxstarter looks for packages when using chocolatey to install those. Amazing performance on this machine. And now we can see that there's this folder called Hello Gary. And within this folder, we've got a new spec and we've got a tools folder. And inside the tools folder, there's the chocolatey install file. Just going to use the terminal from here because it's certainly going to be faster. And if I look into HelloGary.NewSpec, it's like a really basic chocolatey package that's got just the amount of information that's needed to create a valid chocolatey package. And also, if I look into tools chocolatey install, it's like a base template for, yeah, try, write something, catch. If there's an exception, throw the error. You do not need to do this. It's just the basic template that Boxstarter uses when creating a Boxstarter or chocolatey package. And after you created this package, you can use invoke Boxstarter build hello Gary, and this now basically looks for the package called hello Gary, and it creates a new package. So it does a choco pack basically. There might be some finer nuances to it, but we can find a hello Gary version 1. The new package here, which then of course can be picked up by Boxstarter. You can just say install Boxstarter package hello Gary. What I'm not going to do right now, because there might be some additional Windows updates required by this machine, and I do not want to waste a reboot on installing hello Gary. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab this URL from the gist and say install the package. And what you can do is you can, of course, see what parameters are there. And I can just say package name, point the URL towards it. And then I'm doing what I missed earlier, saying credential. And I'm really the worst with the English keyboard. Yes, that's it, getting there. Get credential.
So just while you're typing that then, so what you've written there, the install Boxstarter package name with the just URL, that's the command line equivalent of the click once install that we mentioned earlier. So that URL that you can just click on, which invokes the click once download and then installs Boxstarter, installs Chocolatey, does all the work for you. This is the equivalent of that when you actually have Boxstarter already installed, correct?
Yes, correct. And now we can see some additional outputs, such as Boxstarter going to disable Windows updates. It will wait for CCM or it will wait if CCM is available to stop and wait until it stops before it actually would do a reboot. Now you can see it creates a temp package, which is tmp.something package name. And it says, yeah, I created a temporary package. And now it already detected there was a reboot pending. It's disabling UAC, and now it's going to restart. So Boxstarter is actively disabling the UAC because it needs to run elevated, because Chocolatey requires to be run elevated most of the times. So there might, yeah. But let's say typically when you want to install software, you most likely need to be elevated, or you need to have like elevated administrative privileges. And therefore, Boxstarter, whenever it's required to reboot, it disables UAC. And after the reboot, then automatically this logon script, which is created by Boxstarter, will be able to elevate. And in this elevated session, the installation will continue. And after Boxstarter is finished, the UAC will be restored to the state the PC has been before calling Boxstarter.
And the disabling of the Windows updates is one of those things you might not think about, but if Windows updates are happening in the background as you're trying to install an application, it can actually stop an application from installing correctly. So Boxstarter is really trying to help you in that regard as well. It will say, let's concentrate on doing one thing at a time, and that one thing is the installing of this application or this list of packages. And then when I finish, I'll come back, I'll put Windows updates back on for you if they were on before.
Yes.
Cool.
It's really unfortunate that this machine got so slow when doing the stream or the sharing.
So there's a question from DS Flux. It was like, so whoa, I must be a noob. What was the function or hotkey that Manfred used to show all the available commands for the Boxstarter commandlet in PowerShell? What were you doing there?
So after the dash, you type, if the terminal supports it, I must say, then you just type dash and control space to get the list of all the the parameters that are in the commandlet. And you can just cycle or tap through.
Perfect. So that's control space, which is similar to IntelliSense that you might have in Visual Studio for getting the available properties and methods on an object. So the real question here is then, how long is this reboot of this VM going to take? But to reiterate again, what will happen is that Boxstarter is reboot resilient. So when this comes back up, you already have provided the credential object. It's been securely stored on the system. It'll automatically re-log in with that credential. It'll pick up where it left off. Now, there's an inherent assumption there that the script that you've created in that gist is idempotent in the sense that it does something once and then it's got a check in it to make sure that it doesn't need to do it again. Chocolatey package installation is idempotent by its nature, because if it's already installed, if you attempt to install it again, Chocolatey will just step over it. But essentially, it'll then continue through that gist, whatever that script is doing, and it'll carry on its merry way. It'll eventually get to the point where it's completed, and you've got a fully installed, up-to-date working system ready to be used at that point.
Yes, but just let me add one thing to this. So whenever you're running a Boxstarter to install a Chocolatey package, which then literally is being treated as a Boxstarter package. So whenever you see like a Choco install inside of a script or a package that's being installed by a Boxstarter, Boxstarter will add the force parameter to it. So every package that's installed by a Boxstarter will be force installed. So this only does apply to when you've got a dependency chain. It of course only is applied to the topmost package of this chain. Just keep it in mind that if you use Boxstarter to set up your host, you really want to be your setup script to be idempotent. You always want them to be, but just you most likely will run into problems if you do not design your Boxstarter scripts this way.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
So I'm just going to stop the screen sharing now, and then
I think, yeah, maybe best. So in terms of what we've covered, let's just go through the list. So Manfred and I met last night just to discuss all the topics that we wanted to cover today. So just looking through it, we've spoken about how you can install Boxstarter. So you can either use Chocolatey to install it, or there is a zip file that you can download from the website, and that contains a bootstrapper script that will get everything installed on that machine as you need it. So it just really depends on how you want to do it. Or there is the click once installer that we spoke about. There's the Boxstarter console, so the shell that Manfred showed. It's literally just ensuring that all of the required imports and the path variables are set up in the same way that, say, the Visual Studio console is set up to have all the directory structures and environment variables that are required for working. So we've shown that working. We've spoken about the additional functions that Boxstarter provides for the Windows config feature. So if you wanted to set your taskbar in a certain way, or you wanted to set some system features, Boxstarter provides some helper functions, which really at the end of the day is just really setting a bunch of registry keys that someone's figured out how to do that setting, and it's just creating a PowerShell function around it to make that happen. We've shown how you can create a package with Boxstarter and then either creating and installing them locally, or using a gist, which is the one that was just running just now. We've spoken about the reboot resiliency that Boxstarter brings to the table. I don't think we're going to get to the final demo, which is installing remotely, but did you maybe just want to speak to that and what that entails?
Yes, so Boxstarter also has a couple of helpers that allow you to basically specify a host name or a list of host names or connection details even that you want to run Boxstarter commands against. So you can use install Boxstarter package. So the same thing that you would usually use to install a Boxstarter package locally, and yeah, have it run on a remote host. Then Boxstarter configures WinRAM, given that you already ran enable PS remoting on the host machine you're targeting, then it will use WinRAM or partial remoting to connect to that machine and do everything that's required for it to install the packages and the package there. So it is able to like pass the list of local chocolatey sources to the remote installation for the means or for the duration of the installation. And then it will actually go there and do all of its magic, including reboot resiliency and so on the remote host, and come back to you when the remote host is done installing the Boxstarter package. So all of this that you can do locally, you can also basically do in a remote session. There is a slight difference in how the remote installation is basically achieved, because there's certain limitations of what you can do in a partial remote session. So and a lot of times like a scheduled task is created and run immediately and waited for a scheduled task to run, but all of the output is coming through as you would expect, and it's just like working against the remote machine as it would be working against the local host. So it kind of encapsulates and keeps all of this.
Makes sense. We'd also wanted to highlight the new Boxstarter website that's been given a recent makeover. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check it out. Steph put in a lot of work to kind of bring that up to speed. I think it's fair to say that the previous website was starting to look a little bit dated. But I think it's also fair to say that Matt Rocks is not a web developer or a web designer, so it's had a much needed overhaul. So we're thankful to Steph for putting all that together. So that's looking really good. There are some updates that we would want to do for the website in terms of the documentation. I think some of the documentation needs to be overhauled in terms of how it's maybe structured and some of the content that's in there. That's on the to-do list. So we'll definitely be getting that done at some point. So if you've got any feedback on the website, again, reach out and let us know. We on the list as well, just to make sure just to recap it, we wanted to mention the Microsoft repository, where there are some examples of using Boxstarter for those different scenarios to install different packages, different applications, and set different configurations based on whether you're a web developer, whether you're a Windows developer. So go and have a look at that. I know that they've done quite a bit of work in terms of creating shared scripts that go into the different packages. So from one gist URL or what is essentially a raw URL of a file in the repository, you're actually bringing in scripts from other locations within that repository. So they've made it so that it's possible to share those scripts. So there's some good ideas in terms of how that is structured and how that goes together. So that was that, and I think we've covered pretty much everything that we wanted to go through. So it was a little unfortunate that the demos didn't work as intended, but
Yes.
it's also fair to say that it's a known issue sometimes with Zoom consuming resources and sharing of that. It has caused problems in the past, and it's bitten us again in this scenario. Deus Flux responded to say, just played around with using control space in PowerShell and my mind is blown. So that's good news.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I've always defaulted to using Google to look up parameters. Now I won't have to. Thanks, guys. Yep, no, absolutely. I think I knew about that one, but I don't know. I don't get to play with PowerShell very often, as some folks on the stream will know. I'm a C# developer by trade, and I don't get to play with PowerShell in any way, shape, or form. I'm not sure if that link that you sent into chat will come through, Manfred. If Stevie or Ryan is around, I can't see the link, is what I'm saying. It just comes up as three. It comes up as 3 stars for me. But if Stevie or Ryan's around, they can maybe put the URLs into the chat, and it would stick around. Gracias amigos, that works even in PowerShell 5.1. So all the way back to 5.1, you can do the control space as well. So that's good. I'm not. I know your handle, but I cannot for the life of me remember your name, and I apologize. It's CTM Cisco. I want to say it's not Christos, is it? Is it just Chris? I can't remember. I do apologize. I should know your name, but I apologize. So Francisco, that's the one. I don't know where I got Chris from. I apologize. And Stevie's put in the link to boxstarter.org there, which is maybe what you were gunning for.
No, actually, I was going for the Windows Dev box setup scripts, but yeah, boxstarter.org is also fine.
Cool. So no, I think that's all we've got. I think unless there was any closing comments you wanted to say, Manfred.
Yeah, well, the release of Boxstarter v3, maybe just a little close up. So the v3 of Boxstarter, the release of Boxstarter v3 has been a couple of months in the making, because we really wanted to. Yeah, it was a rethinking of Boxstarter. Actually, was glued to Chocolatey or other way around. But from now on, Boxstarter will be able to pick up new versions of Chocolatey. You're able to use all of the business features if you've got a business license of Chocolatey, and also Boxstarter development and integration with Chocolatey should be easier now, given the way that Boxstarter interacts with Chocolatey is now more or less the standardized way and approach Chocolatey wants it to be. So expect development to more or less speed up a little in comparison to what it's been in like the past couple of years. So I saw the commit history or the commit frequency on GitHub, and it really so Boxstarter had a lot of development between 2013 and 2015 or so, and for the last 6+ years there's not much been going on. And so this is hopefully going to change now. So expect a couple of more features to come. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm kind of more the Linux guy and not very keen on using Windows. And especially when thinking of things like build systems, where you really normally or in a lot of times do not have all Windows hosts, and would want to kind of do some stuff on remote worker agents that happen to be Windows nodes. This is something where Boxstarter could definitely help for setting up hosts and could be integrated in CI/CD systems. Given that, there also is this requirement, of course, that Boxstarter needs to be able to run on PowerShell core, which it currently does not fully do. There's some kind of things you can do on a Windows, but on Linux it's just broken. So this is something that's definitely coming in. Yeah, but not going to spoil it. So we're heading in this direction of being platformish independent for certain things. Of course, you will not be able to like install Chocolatey packages on Linux, but there will be some things you can do, such as doing remote installations, creating Chocolatey packages. There's always already Docker container for Chocolatey I can use to do things like that. So there's the Linux Chocolatey Boxstarter Docker container, and yeah, expect stuff like this happening in the maybe not very near future, but definitely somewhere around 2022.
Cool. I'm excited to see what comes from that then. One thing to note on that kind of point as well, some of our internal infrastructure here at Chocolatey has changed. So our ability to do releases in a more timely manner is a lot better than it used to be as well. Hence why I was able to this morning start the release, get out the door and ship it without too much problems. If anyone was following along, there was a slight issue with pushing the packages. That was totally my fault, and I fixed it, and it's now been resolved. So that's nothing to do with what Manfred was doing. That was all on me, but it's fixed, so it's all good. But no, with that then, I think that is all we've got time for tonight, which is coming up to the top of the hour. Keep an eye out on the chocolatey.org and community.chocolatey.org for upcoming events for the next Twitch stream and the next community chat. And I don't have the exact details of when those are, so I'm not going to lie to you, but keep an eye out on the events channels there and in Discord to find out when the next events are. And hopefully we will see you all then. Thank you all very much for hanging out, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you very much.
See you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.